The sun was sinking below the horizon, casting long shadows across McAllister's farm, a sprawling, lonely patch of land 9 hours west of Sydney. I'd been the caretaker here for 2 years, ever since my divorce left me craving solitude. The farm was enormous, big enough to feel like its own little world, surrounded by rolling pastures and thick eucalyptus woods. The nearest town, Willow Creek, was a 40-minute drive, and most days it was just me, my dog Max, and the endless quiet. Mr. McAllister, the owner, was a ghost, showing up once a year at most, leaving me to keep the place running. I'd gotten used to the isolation. The farm was familiar territory, except for the northern woods. Lately, though, something had been off. At night, I'd hear a faint humming, like machinery working in the distance, and sometimes I'd catch flickers of light through the trees. I tried brushing it off, maybe kangaroos or some kids camping where they shouldn't, but it stuck with me, nagging at the edges of my mind. One autumn morning, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my backpack, stuffing it with water, a flashlight, a first aid kit, and my hunting knife. Max, my Australian shepherd, wagged his tail as we set off into the forest. The air was sharp and cool, the scent of eucalyptus thick around us. After an hour of hacking through tangled underbrush, I stepped into a clearing that didn't belong. My breath caught in my throat. There, smack in the middle, was a big blue shipping container, its metal gleaming under the sun like it had no business being there. I froze, staring at it. My heart started thumping hard against my ribs, loud enough I could hear it over the rustling leaves. This wasn't right. Containers don't just appear in the middle of nowhere, hidden in a forest on private land. I circled it slowly, Max sniffing the ground beside me, my boots crunching on dry twigs. It was new, no rust, no dents, just a solid, silent thing with a heavy padlock on the door. No labels, no markings, nothing to say where it came from. The dirt around it was churned up, tire tracks stretching off into the trees like someone had hauled it here and left in a hurry. "What the hell is this?" I muttered, my voice shaky. Max looked up at me, ears perked, but he didn't have answers either. My palms were sweaty, and a cold prickle ran down my spine. I didn't know what I was expecting. Maybe some farmer's forgotten storage. But this felt different, wrong, like I'd stumbled onto something I wasn't supposed to see. I wanted to turn back, to pretend I'd never found it, but my feet wouldn't move. I had to know. I ran back to the farmhouse, my mind racing with every step. Grabbing bolt cutters from the shed, I hopped on my ATV and tore back to the clearing, Max bounding behind me. The whole way, my gut twisted tighter, whispering that I was making a mistake. When I got there, the container loomed even larger, its blue surface cold and unyielding. I gripped the cutters, my hands trembling so bad I almost dropped them. What if someone was watching? What if this was a trap? But I'd come this far. I couldn't stop now. With a grunt, I snapped the padlock. The clang echoed through the trees, and I flinched, half expecting someone to come charging out of the woods. Nothing happened. Swallowing hard, I pulled the door open, the hinges creaking like a scream in the stillness. I shone my flashlight inside, and my jaw dropped. It wasn't empty. It was an office, a full-blown, high-tech setup crammed into this metal box. A big desk sat in the center, covered with computer monitors, keyboards, and cables. A diesel generator hummed in the corner, its low rumble filling the space. Surveillance cameras stared down from the walls, their red lights blinking like eyes. A shelf was packed with external hard drives and routers. I stepped inside, my boots thudding on the metal floor, and my chest tightened so much I could barely breathe. This wasn't some hunter's shack or a smuggler's stash. This was professional, hidden out here where no one would look. My mind spun wild theories, government secrets, drug lords, something worse. I didn't want to be here anymore. I wanted to bolt, to lock it back up, and forget it existed. But my hands moved on their own, sitting me down at the desk. I powered on a monitor, my fingers clumsy on the keys. A login screen popped up. I tried password, admin, anything obvious. Nothing worked. Then I grabbed a hard drive from the shelf, my heart hammering so loud it drowned out the generator. I'd picked up a trick years ago for cracking basic security. Nothing fancy, just enough to get by. I plugged it in, fumbled through the steps, and the screen unlocked. What I saw next hit me like a punch to the stomach. Folders, dozens of them. I clicked one, and my screen filled with videos and images, sick, twisted stuff. Child pornography. My vision blurred, bile rising in my throat. I scrolled, hands shaking, unable to stop even as my stomach heaved. Kids, helpless, terrified kids, staring out at me from the screen. I ripped the drive out, stumbling back so fast I nearly fell. My breath came in ragged gasps, and I pressed a hand to my mouth, trying not to puke. "Who does this?" I choked out, my voice breaking. Max whined, nudging my leg, but I barely felt him. Fear clawed at me, raw and suffocating. Whoever set this up wasn't just breaking the law. They were monsters, and they'd been here, on this farm, right under my nose. Were they watching me now? Had they seen me come in? I spun around, scanning the trees through the open door. But there was nothing, just silence and shadows. I had to get out. I slammed the door shut, fumbling to secure it with the broken lock, and tore back to the farmhouse on the ATV. Max ran beside me, and I kept glancing over my shoulder, convinced I'd see someone chasing us. Back home, I grabbed the landline, no cell service out here, and dialed the police, my words tripping over each other as I explained. They said they'd come, but it'd take an hour. An hour. I hung up, pacing the kitchen, my skin crawling. I couldn't sit still. What if they came back? What if they knew I'd found it? I scribbled notes, everything I'd seen, every detail, trying to keep my hands busy. When the police finally rolled up, 2 cars kicking up dust, I ran out to meet them. We drove to the clearing, but as we got close, I saw smoke curling into the sky. The container was burning. "No, no, no!" I shouted, jumping off the ATV. Flames roared inside, licking the walls, swallowing everything. The cops tried to put it out, but it was too late. The computers, the drives, all gone, melted into a blackened mess. I stood there, legs weak, feeling like the ground had dropped out from under me. Sergeant Williams took my statement, his face grim. "This sounds organized," he said. "The fire means someone's covering tracks. We'll investigate, but it's slim pickings now." I nodded, numb. When I asked if they'd come back, he paused. "Maybe. We'll leave an officer here for a bit." Officer Daniels stayed 3 days. Nothing happened. The police searched, followed the tire tracks to a highway, then lost the trail. Life was supposed to go back to normal, but it didn't. Those images stuck with me, flashing behind my eyes every time I closed them. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Mr. McAllister swore he knew nothing, and the container stayed in the clearing, a charred skeleton too costly to haul away. I turned paranoid. Every creak of the house, every rustle outside had me grabbing my knife. Max stuck close, his ears always up. Then, a month later, I found it. I was locking up for the night, when I saw an envelope under the doormat. My hands shook as I picked it up, a bad feeling sinking into my bones. Inside was a photo, a clear shot of the container, untouched, time-stamped the day I'd found it. I flipped it over, and my blood turned to ice. "We know," it said, scrawled in red ink. I dropped it, my heart slamming against my ribs. My eyes darted around the yard, the trees, the dark beyond the porch light. Nothing moved, but I felt them, eyes on me, waiting. My breath hitched, and I backed inside, locking the door, checking it twice, 3 times. Max growled low, staring at the window. "They know," I whispered, clutching the photo. They'd been there. They'd seen me. Were they out there now, planning something worse? I took it to Sergeant Williams the next day, my voice trembling as I handed it over. He frowned, promised more patrols, but weeks passed with no answers. The case stalled. I thought about leaving, packing up and running, but I couldn't. This was my home, my fight. I put up cameras, kept a shotgun by my bed, and trained Max to bark at anything strange. One night, sitting on the porch with the gun across my lap, I heard it again, that faint humming. My grip tightened, sweat beading on my forehead. I strained to listen, my pulse racing. Was it them? Were they back? The sound faded, leaving me in silence, but I didn't relax. I couldn't. Not anymore. With Max beside me, I'd face whatever came. Fear or not, I wasn't running.